Hi, it's really lovely to have today here on the UK column the wonderful Lynne Taylor from the United States. She's down there in, where are you again? You're in North Carolina.
North Carolina. Mhm.
Amazing. Now, Lynne, I've known about Lynne for a very long time. I've looked at her work. She is truly incredible with the information that she puts out, particularly about education. She talks about social and emotional learning in schools. She talks about, what we're going to be talking about today is also Kate Middleton's involvement with the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood. And what that really means, because people think, oh, how lovely she's dealing with, young children, and how that's really connected to an awful lot of the stuff that we're talking about, the corporatization and the selling on of data, of children's data, which is highly suspect and worrying to all of us. And we're going to touch on the MINDSPACE document as well. Now, Lynne, tell us a little bit about yourself. And I know that you're known as the Common Core diva because you deal with Common Core education and what that really means in education, because it's a global agenda, isn't it?
Yes, it absolutely is. Yes. And Common Core is not exclusive to America. A lot of people will think, oh, well, you live in another country. It's not here. Absolutely, it is. And the reason I know that is because there was a wonderful booklet that was written by a lady by the name of Barrett. That's Berit, and her last name is Kjos. So I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce that last name, but she wrote a booklet, and it was called the Common. I'm not going to get the title just right, but it was basically the agenda for a common one world curriculum, and that very precisely is Common Core, because we know that UNESCO and Bill Gates in 2004 signed a global agreement that all education across the world would be the same thing, and this was what they tagged it was Common Core.
Yes, and everything is one world, everything, isn't it? I mean, this is what we're looking at. We're looking at one world government, one world, religion, one world education, one world everything, and everybody being bought into this whole digitalization, and they are literally selling our souls. I mean, the data harvesting is real. I mean, you look at the facial recognition, everything that's going on. But when it comes to children, it becomes particularly emotive for me, especially, and I'm sure it does for you as well. So tell me how you got started with all this, looking at, for instance, social and emotional learning, because I find that fascinating.
Okay. Well, where I really got started, Sandy, was way back in the dark ages of, 20, 30 years ago. I was doing some research, and it was like, oh, wait a minute. This one world curriculum is not just reserved for public schools. This is going to go into private schools, parochial schools. This is going into homeschooling. And I know different countries have different parameters for each of those types of schooling. But when you have that one world agenda to homogenize everyone so that they're learning the same thing, hooking them into that data tracking system that goes with it, the goal is not to academically give Johnny and Susie an academic mind full of how to think and how to problem solve or how to put two and two together and come up with four. It is to train you for a job, because the economy means more than the person. And anytime we put profit over children, especially, it is very damaging, not only to their minds, but to their hearts. And just what is it that you are teaching? So when I found all this out, I'm like, okay, there's no way that I cannot, first of all, learn more. And then two, more importantly, start sharing this information, because people were not waking up to it. They were whining and moaning over the fact of, well, this new math, two and two could be whatever you want as long as you could explain it away. Well, when we start removing facts for opinions, opinions did not build a safe bridge that could get you from point A to point B over a body of water. Facts are what is going to build that bridge so that you can get from point A to point B over a body of water safely. So when we start putting in opinion where fact used to be, we start going into that social and emotional learning garbage. I call it student data rape, because not glorifying the physical act of rape, but you look at the parameters for physical. It's punishable by a crime. It does horrendous mind damage. It exploits whoever has been physically compromised. And data is doing the same thing, and it's doing it for a profit, whereas the physical act is for control. This is all about profits, but we also have control in there, because what the government can profit off of, they can control. So what better way to say, okay, I'm going to go in and I'm going to attack your child's social and emotional learning, or in other words, their attitudes, their values, and their beliefs. And we're going to so shift it away from what mom and dad and the family and the culture and the tradition dictate to, oh no, we have to be this collectively minded moron who goes out and becomes a good social warrior for the sustainable development goals.
Exactly. I mean, it seems to support sort of a long-term psychological compliance. That's what they're after, creating these sort of, perfect global citizens. And this is the worry. And with those, those ESG values, unfortunately, with the values of the ESGs, the environmental and social governance values, and this is a problem. So it stops creative thinking. That they're just being told what to think, and it's propagandized, and that's the worst thing. Yeah.
It absolutely is. But talking about putting profits over children, and that will kind of segue into the Royal Foundation, is the fact that I think it was 2 or 3 years ago, Sandi, I did an article on the profit making of the social and emotional market across the world, not just here in America, but it was upwards of billions of dollars. I want to say it was around a projected profit margin for the social and emotional learning companies, such as your curriculum, your after school programs, things like that. 30 billion with a B dollars. Now, what that equates to in English pounds, I'm not sure, but it's horrifying to listen and learn that you have companies out there whose entire mission is to undermine how your child believes in what they learn. It's no longer about being a good citizen because it's the right thing to do. It's being a good citizen so you can have a good social credit score so that you can eat or you can work. What are we doing?
Yeah, 100%. And this is what, I remember speaking to you, and you said that you'd looked into the Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood that Kate Middleton is involved with. And it's funny because at the same time, I was looking into the Lego Foundation. People think a Lego, oh, lovely, it's a wonderful toy, children use it all over the world. What a pernicious organization they are. And
Oh,
when
absolutely.
you realize that this is all shored up now, for those that don't know, Kate Middleton, our Princess of Wales, she in June 2021, she set up this Royal Foundation Centre for Early Childhood, but it's to drive awareness action into research into early years development, and with that comes a whole load of quite concerning stuff. It's promoted by the WHO and UNICEF, and the executives that back it up are Unilever, the Ernst and Young Corporation, NatWest, and the Lego Foundation, which I've done quite a deep dive into. And it's sort of like it's a global alignment. You've got the WEF, and it aligns with the good health and well-being, the SDG 4. So it's all comes under, and it's kind of a state or corporate influence over parenting, and early biometric behavioral data collection, and it kind of creates children into a pathology sort of mind data set, where children's behavior is kind of surveilled, and there's some really concerning stuff there. So do tell us what you know about Kate Middleton, please.
Well, before we get into that, Sandy, I wanted to make a couple of comments as far as how this lends itself to the communitarianism
Yeah,
that we're seeing across our governments. Because without the communitarianism, which also attaches itself to the Noahide laws,
yeah,
you're not going to have some of these programs like the Royal Foundation's overreach into early childhood education or the business overreach into early childhood education. And this is from a person who is out of Texas. I do not know their full name, but they have been considered quite the expert on communitarianism. And this is what I wanted to point out. According to Lark,
oh, is that Lark in Texas? Lark,
yes, it
I know
is.
him well. He's lovely.
Okay, so you know who I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
he's
Good.
great.
All
He's
right.
brilliant.
Communitarianism is the philosophy that emphasizes the connection between the individual and the community. And when you're talking about places and corporations like the Royal Foundation, Lego, whatever, you're going to see exactly that because you have socialism that connects to gangsterism, which equates to slavery. So we're not teaching our children to be anything other than glorified indentured servitudes to our governments, or servants to our governments, I should say. Here in America, we have the 14th Amendment that was supposed to outlaw indentured servitude to a government. But we're seeing enslavement happen through education, and it's through this communitarianism. He also says here it's the basis for a globalized surveillance
Hmm.
or a police state, which is
Totally.
exactly what we're experiencing in both countries as well as all over the world. It says here it's much like the 21st century prison or work camp. Well, I don't know about in England, but I can tell you in America, we live in the largest open air prison known to man.
Yeah. I mean, I really actually Lark is somebody that I've said I would like to interview on here because his work is extraordinary, and I did read Nikki Rapana and Nordica Friedrich's wonderful. Unfortunately, Nikki's not with us anymore. She passed away, I think, in 2020, and the if anybody wants to understand what communitarianism is, do read the Anti-Communitarian Manifesto, and it's written by Nikki Rapana and Nordica Friedrich, and it's online for free. And that's where I got a lot of my information from. And Lark is really expanding it. He's absolutely amazing because people have no idea what communitarianism is, and it's coming to us because the whole word community has been used to create this almost like a little gulag, so that when we get our smart cities or our 15-minute cities, that everything is contained within that, and we have a snitch society because they want community policing, which is everybody. It's like 1984, everybody watching everybody, as well as the surveillance that we have. It's everybody watching everyone, and this is really, really worrying.
And
Yeah.
in education, you have to watch for the surveys that the children bring home because those surveys are designed to turn the child into a snitch for the family. Now, here in America, they're known as a survey that attaches itself to adverse childhood experiences. And the mindset over that is, well, if we can get rid of every negative aspect of Johnny and Susie's life, we'll have a happy, healthy, whole child. Now, here's the problem with that. When you take a human being that is filled with positive and negative energies and positive and negative emotions, and you hyper focus on one set, be it positive or be it negative, you negate the other side to the point that it causes irreparable damage physically, mentally, and socially. So, for example, we have this, like I said, these adverse childhood experiences, so we can get rid of all the negatives. Well, what happens when you get rid of all the negatives? Is that somehow, some way, that energy has to come out. And so the child either implodes internally and causes harm to themselves, either physically or emotionally, or they explode and they start damaging others. Does that sound like it really solved the problem? No, it kicked the can down the road. So we really have to be very, very careful with these parent surveys because they don't sound so bad. Because, okay, for example, one of them was, do mom and dad make you go to church more than you want to? Does anyone in your house do drugs? If so, what kind of drugs? Do you see mom and dad smoking or drinking? Notice how it's always, do you see mom and dad? What are mom and dad doing? And with these school assigned devices, they're being even more of a spy. And people will tell me, oh, Lynn, you have no way of knowing that. Yes, I do. And you want to know how? Because I have had parents from all over contact me at different points in me being able to speak out and say, you know, Johnny brought home this laptop and he set it down and he walked away. And darn if next thing I know, my bank account's been spied on. It was the school assigned device that did it. So if you think that school assigned device is just keeping Johnny and Susie abreast of their homework or their online classes, oh, please do beware, because we know we have phones that listen to us. We have computers that listen to us. We have computers that are equipped with data mining information across the whole family. I mean, come on, if you've got meters up over your highways and your freeways that can read your driver's license as you go by and your credit card as you go by, we can have that invasion in the home through the child's computer or these surveys.
It's really worrying, and also it's also the commodifying of children,
It
when
absolutely
because all
is.
of this data is a currency, and we know that the data is the currency now. It's the new gold, and they can sell that on to whoever. You don't know where this data is going. This is the worrying thing.
Well, I can tell you where it ends up. I can tell you that here in America, any of the data that is supposedly local, you can, if you do a freedom of information search, and I'm not sure what you would call it there, but you could do that on your local school, you could do that on your state school or whatever, and you can find out that they have data contracts, sometimes 15 levels deep. What does that mean? That the data that you're told stays local doesn't stay local. No, it goes on to a state level. Then from the state level, it goes to DC, where it is housed in the Department of Education, the Department of Labor, the Department of Health and Human Services, the Department of Commerce. I can several other departments. I'm sure in England you'll have similar, but it goes from there to the international test assessments like the PISA, the program for international student achievement. That also goes into the World Bank organization for their educational research. That goes into the UNESCO arm, which ends up in the United Nations. It's also shared with the International Labor Organization, because we cannot have good worker bees if we don't have education aligned for workforce readiness, which is exactly what this is, to commodify our children so that they are worth more for the greater global capital than they are for their own family's provision.
Yes, and they're sort of funneling children into this, if you like, this technocratic agenda, and they're you've got pay for success schemes, haven't you? And you've got
Oh, yes,
impact
absolutely.
investors all involved in. We know that Michael Bloomberg and certainly Tony Blair
Oh,
he's
yeah.
got an impact investing company, and they are really, it's like they bet on the outcomes of these children. It's a bit like a global futures market, and that is, it's just awful, and it's all aligned with globalist reform initiatives, and 21st century skills, and data driven outcomes, and this is This is really awful. It's almost like they're selling our children's souls on the blockchain, and that is exactly what they're doing.
Well, absolutely are. They are, because in a digitalized world, you don't need humans, but you need avatars, and you're finding out that you're worth more as an avatar because you're a stackable, chunkable credit than you are as a living, breathing, God fearing human. Now, as far as how this ties in with the royals, this is just from the glossary. This is from a report that was put out by the Royal Foundation with the cooperation of the DELOITTE
Oh, that's Deloitte.
Corporation.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Deloitte.
Deloitte.
Yeah,
Okay, but this
they're
is
quite
this
big
is the
here.
report. Okay, it's not really showing up, but
Oh, yeah, I've seen
this was
this.
from May 2024. Now here it is at the bottom. Prioritizing early childhood for a happier, healthier society. Again, what are we stressing? We're not stressing the child as important and valuable, but society. How businesses can drive and benefit from transformative change in the United Kingdom. Now, you go to the glossary, and one of the first things that you see is the adverse childhood experiences, which I just explained. Then you have early childhood education and care, because after all, if we don't educate the whole child, Sandi, well, did you ever stop to wonder what was meant by whole child? It's meaning that we're going to really start with the mind. We're going to hyper focus on the mind, where the social and emotional learning comes in. But when I hear it, I'm like, well, did you think for years that we only send half a child to the schoolroom? What did you do with the other half? The whole child has always been there. It's just we're now going to shift where we pay attention to that child. So we ditch the reading, the writing, the arithmetic. We ditch the critical thinking. We put the critical thinking in kindergarten when a child's mind is absolutely so immature it cannot handle it. And then we confuse them to frustration. And then we wonder why they turn out the way they do. Let's keep going. Environmental social governance, you talked about that. Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, who termed the phrase human capital to describe human beings, because you're worth more in an economic view than you are as a contributing member of society. All right, the United Nations Conventions on the Rights of the Child. Don't get me started on that one. Then you have UNESCO, UNICEF, and the World Economic Forum. Every one of these have direct ties to the Sustainable Development Goals, the social and emotional learning. All 17 goals are woven into UK education, US education, education in Dubai, education in India, Australia, the Philippines, you name it. It is all woven in, because we have to groom better collective global citizens, because we're no longer going to have citizens that will say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States, or whatever it is you do in England or in other countries, because I know this is going to be heard everywhere. So it's no longer going to be that, but it's going to be the global citizenship pledge. And if you've not seen that, I have a giant poster of it. I wish I had gotten it ready for you. We could do it another time, but it is absolutely the dumbest thing on earth, because you're not pledging to support what you know to be valuable. You're pledging yourself to a nationless, formless body of control.
Yeah, I mean, it is. It's like global slavery, really, because
It
you're signed up
absolutely.
to these global agendas, which have psychological nudging going on, all sorts of, because in the UK, we have the behavioural insights team in the cabinet, who came up with, obviously, we're going to talk later about MINDSPACE, but this whole psychological assault on humanity. And we saw it during COVID. We know what happened there. It is there, and it's, if people are more aware of it, people can step aside it and maybe do something about it. Don't comply. I don't know what the solution is, but at the moment, we are looking at ways of stepping out of systems here. But it's very, very difficult, because this is ingrained, and what's happened is it's been decades in the making, decades.
Of course, but the success in all of this, the sick success in all of this, is that it's not to set your child up to succeed, but to have them fail so that the government can rush in with their solution. And that was one of the things that you brought up when you said outcomes. One of the reasons why I hate that word with a purple passion is because when it comes from a government purview, it means that you will fit in a predetermined box that they have decided for you. The government, the system, the education demise has determined that you will fit in, not the free will that you were given, not the curiosity that naturally occurs, because that has to be dumbed down. That has to be taken away because no, you don't need to be curious. No, this test said that you needed to go be a plumber. Well, what if I don't want to be a plumber? Too bad, honey. That's what your education's geared for. But that's why I hate hearing when a government bureaucrat or a business person who has decided to overstep their bounds into education and say, oh, yes, we have the student's outcome all figured out. The only person who should be figuring out that student's income is that outcome, excuse me, not income. That student's outcome is the family and the student themselves. That's it. But when you have business that has said, okay, we're going to overstep our bounds, like this what did you call it? Deloitte and the Royal Foundation, they're allowing the government to literally come into your home to check up on how you're doing as a family, not to fit your checklist of what satisfies your family needs, but their checklist. Did you dot your I's? Did you cross your T's? Did you tip your hat to the governor? It's an overreach that is absolutely so egregious. It just gets me so bumfuddled I can hardly talk. But it also covers a cradle to grave system, is where that data tracking comes in.
Absolutely. And it's a shift really from the parental control and the family control to the state control. And that is a very, well, it's almost, it's a communitarian, communistic ideal. And the thing is that it also, if you're looking at natural law, it's against natural law.
It's an insult to natural law. It absolutely is. And then you have, but look at the failed communist systems where they said, okay, mom and dad, you're not mom and dad, you're a couple, and your job is to breed, our job is to raise. And think how well that turned out. And we want to replicate that in modern form? I don't think so.
When you look at the history, you realize, that this has failed many, many times. And this is what they appear to be trying to funnel us into. And we have to be very aware of what's going on.
Well, we have to ask ourselves, Sandi, how many different shades of lipstick am I going to put on the same pig before I finally get it through my head? It's not going to work. It's not going to make that pig beautiful. That pig's still a stinking pig.
It's a good analogy. Well done.
Sorry. I told you it gets me riled up.
I'm just amazed because there seems to be a bit of an agenda here. Because I will go back to the Lego Foundation, who've got real links with this Royal Foundation Centre. And what I found interesting about them is that in 2021, they committed 143 million to children impacted by COVID-19. Now, obviously, that's problem, reaction, solution. A lot of children did get very, very disturbed during COVID-19, and it's almost like, we'll take care of them. We'll we completely destroyed their mental health during COVID, but now we're going to make it all better with all this money, and we will decide the directives on how to do that. And they also donated 100 million to support early childhood development in any given crisis situation in the future. That was in 2022. Now, what does that mean? And this is. They are partnered with UNICEF, International Rescue Committee, Play Futures and Labs, which is all about social and emotional learning, all the stuff that goes with that. So what do you think that's all about? Sort of looking at it as early childhood development in crisis situations. What are they planning on that there?
Well, that's code for widening the net of what's a crisis.
Yeah, exactly.
That's also redefining what is a crisis, because a crisis for your family may not meet the national criteria for what crisis is. But if it's a crisis in the family, it's still a crisis. And that's the thing. You cannot you shouldn't, let's put it that way. You shouldn't across the board say A, B, C, and D qualify as crisis. Everything else, not so much.
Yeah.
It was kind of like when you saw during COVID who was classified essential and who wasn't, or what service was classified as essential and what wasn't. Because I'm going to tell you what, with all the different dietary needs that are in my family alone, what was classified as essential across the board, none of us could even qualify. Even if we wanted to, we couldn't, because it wasn't deemed essential. What was deemed essential was things that people without sensitivities to diet could have. And that's just a broad example. But again, you can't you shouldn't across the board say A, B, C, and D qualify as crisis, because, okay, mom or dad loses their job. That might create a family crisis, but according to whatever national parameter, not so much, because guess what? Mom can now go get food stamps, or dad can go get, public assistance. What is that helping set up? The nanny state, because government coddles you, government provides for you. So who needs the parents? Parents don't matter. They just don't matter, because after all, the state has a solution. And one of the things that gets me about the Lego group is they are a wolf in sheep's clothing. They have been for years, because I can remember back on my blog, it's commoncorediva.com. I did a article on when Legos sold out to the United Nations, and they're doing it to help promote what's called coding. And coding is what is being used to turn our little people, our little children, into trained spies, to spy on families, to spy on neighbors, because it all goes back to the coding. It all goes back to the, are you being a good citizen, or are you being that nonconformist that we just can't handle? That is what I know about them. They are tied in with what's called science, technology, engineering, and math. And people look at me and, well, you just don't understand. We need science. We need technology. We need engineering and math. And I don't argue. Because if you look at traditional math, if you look at traditional engineering, that's when we were able to invent wonderful things like bridges. I used that earlier. But under Common Core, or this globalized education, have you seen some of the modern bridges? They don't last, because they're not built with facts. They're not built with quality engineering. We have dumbed down mathematicians and dumbed down engineers. And the reason why STEM is so toxic is because it was a tool cooked up by the United Nations, and I can verify every bit of this. So when you hear this, do not think I have my tinfoil hat on too tightly, because I don't. I can back all this stuff up, but it was cooked up by the United Nations, and it was sold in America as an acronym that would be tied into Common Core, but without a whole lot of public attention. So they stealthily snuck it in, because the United Nations came over and said to the the National Science Foundation, which is a non-government organization of the United States government. They receive congressional funds, which means taxpayer dollars. And yet they have all this jurisdiction over what happens in education and in science specifically. But they came over to the National Science Foundation and said, we need an acronym that's going to sound good, but it's not going to be good. And so that's how the National Science Foundation came up with STEM. It's now morphed into STEAM or STREAM. And every time they add a different letter, they're adding a different part of your child's curriculum. So STREAM, in other words, stands for science, technology, reading, writing, arithmetic, the arts, engineering, and math.
Because it used to be STEM, didn't it? Just that's what it is here at the moment, STEM. Yeah.
Okay, steam was hatched in North Korea, I believe it was, passed off as created at the University of Rhode Island here in the United States. I documented that. So every time it has gained a new letter, I have been researching it. But the reason why I'm bringing it up that it was passed off as an agenda point is because when Obama went into office, he had no presidential experience whatsoever, but he was handed two reports. One was the nation's academic progress report, and the other was the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology. And in that particular PCAST report, and this is on my blog as well, one of the first articles I ever wrote, it revealed we needed to create a STEM education, to create a STEM people with STEM jobs for a STEM economy to contribute to the greater global good. Does that sound like it was American taxpayer inspired? No. Does it sound globally hooked up? Yep. But the reason why is because the United Nations knew if America could accept it from within, like it came up with its own idea of let's do this, people would be all over it like white on rice saying, yes, let's go. But if they found out that it was coming from an outside entity like the United Nations, there would be so much pushback, it wouldn't succeed. So it was married to the Common Core state standards so that it could align education with jobs. And if you look at what it has done, it has reduced education down into clusters. And within each cluster is this myriad or a limited myriad of jobs that you can get.
Yeah. So did this originate then in the United States, or is it a UN directive?
It's a UN directive, so you would need to look in the UK government who snuck it in, because it will have been snuck in. And the reason I say that is because remember, Common Core was all the rage when this came up. And so they took advantage of while your head is turned on one issue, I'm going to sneak this other issue that connects right in, and you're never going to know it.
Yeah. It probably would have been the education secretary or so, or someone here like Michael Gove or whoever.
It would definitely hook in with science, because after all, and you've seen what has happened with science. Science has become a god. It's become a religion.
It's a religion.
And you know, there's a report out there, and I think it's from the UN. If not, it's from one of their partners. But we have to start addressing the misinformation about science, because after all, people like you and I, we can't discuss science because after all, we're not trained scientists. And if we discuss science, well, we might give the wrong impression about what real science is. Well, let's stop and look at what real science is and who's being paid to tell you what science is.
Exactly. And they do have this idea that the science is settled, and they know that it's kind of rigid. Science is never rigid. It flows, and it should never become settled.
It constantly changes.
Constantly changing, indeed.
Because it has since the dawn of creation, and it's tied into creation.
Creation, exactly. And this is amazing. Maybe we should just briefly move on, because I'm aware of time, onto MINDSPACE, because this is a continuation of it, because this is kind of almost, that started in the UK cabinet, didn't it? Tell us a bit about, Brian Gerrish of UK Column, he's been on this for so many years, and I've looked into it, but you just run us through briefly MINDSPACE, because again, that is again about psychological conditioning and a top-down agenda, public good and all that, and mind manipulation, nudging and all that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It absolutely is. And here's the fascinating thing. I know that you have a colleague who has delved into it. I know that I have done several shows and several articles on the MINDSPACE. And one of the things that I was horrified to discover was because, it's been touted as being UK created. The base research has come from America through universities and through government. And that to me was very shocking. It was like, wait a minute. because if you look at the background, it was a combination of MI5 and the CIA. Now you go look at the roots and the history of both those organizations, and you see that it ties back to Nazi Germany. So we're continuing on some of the same uh, psychological warfare tactics, but we're now switching it from enemies to civilians.
It never went
and we've
away.
gotten the and
Yeah.
we've gotten the government's okay to do it. So we'll sit there and we'll nudge you into thinking, well, I'm sorry, your definition of science is wrong. But the government over here says that it should be that everybody needs to eat apples because apples are great. They're not telling you that those apples have been chemically treated with a poison that could kill you or give you cancer. That's just a very basic example, but the mind space is it's a it's a shift towards this collective think that you as an individual don't matter. But if you plug into a group, then suddenly you matter because you can contribute to that group. And when we see the group think that affects society, I mean, all you had to do was mention COVID, and what happened? So many people jumped on the bandwagon. Whether that bandwagon was true or not didn't matter. Well, we see Johnny and Susie doing it. Well, we'll do it because it must be right. Or King so and so, or Queen so and so, or President so and so said we had to do this. Ooh, I must do it. Did you lose your ability to think for yourself? That's what MindSpace wants you to do. It wants you to lose that ability, that individuality, so that you can be more controlled. Um, I know we could go so much further into it.
Yeah, we could. I mean,
We
I just
could.
see it as a blueprint for social engineering, really, and
Well, it
it kind of
absolutely is.
it undermines the democratic principles that people, instead of being sort of people, they are subjects to be engineered. They're not. They
Yes.
don't. They had. It's not as though they have free will. Yeah,
Right. You're setting up that case system to be lorded over.
yeah, yeah.
And you're going to have your rulers and the rulees, or the haves and the have nots. Well, I know from studying some British history that y'all have had years of experience with that, and it didn't always end well. You had uprisings, and as you should. I know here we have never wanted to have a case system, but we're perfectly content to see it implemented in degrees that we don't recognize it.
Yeah, and it blurs those lines between policy and propaganda as well. It's quite pernicious the way it's put together, and it's all dressed up, sugar coated as a public good yet again. Yeah,
Of course, I'm not going to give you vinegar, honey. I'm going to put sugar in it so you'll never know. But here's the
yeah.
here's a question I have for you. Now, I don't know about there because I'm not exactly sure how everything works as far as legally. So is policy equated with law there, and is it part of law or is it a separate entity?
Is policy law, you mean? It's a kind of
Yes.
soft law, but what happens here is that it's based on compliance. And what they
Okay.
do is they say things are mandatory,
Right.
thinking that people will interpret that as you have to do it, but you don't. So it's soft law, but the propaganda is kind of, it brings people to believe that it's law. And that's what
Right.
happened in COVID. Nothing that was done. I mean, it's a bit like Nazi Germany. Nothing was illegal, you know.
Right. Exactly. Well, here in America, we have laws. And the way I describe it is that the law is the concrete of the side. It's the concrete sidewalk, and it's firm because it should be. That's the basis of where everything should be. Okay. Policy is represented by the different trees that are next to the sidewalk. So you might have an oak tree. It has a different leaf than a pecan tree, or an elm tree or a hickory tree or whatever tree you want to use. My point is different groups who have buddied up to Congress, or think tanks, if you will, have said, oh, well, the law says you shouldn't eat bread on Monday. Well, our think tank group got together and we decided that, You can have rye you can have rye bread on Monday. Well, wait a minute. The law says no bread. Oh, but it's rye. See, that's our interpretation of the law. And you go to the next tree and, okay, well, you can't have pumpernickel, but you can have, every other. Again, you see, we're splitting hairs, but it's a truth here. A law does not equate to a policy, but you have many people who are convinced they are interchangeable, which is why I use the concrete and the tree example, because a sidewalk and a tree are not interchangeable. They coexist. And what we see it being turned into is not soft law, but de facto rule. And when you have law, why do you need de facto rule? It's in competition.
Absolutely.
It is to create a confused society so that you can manipulate them, which is what the MINDSPACE does. So some of the very principles that you're seeing play out in England connected to the MINDSPACE got their start here. So, and where did they get their research from?
Yeah.
The past.
Okay.
Failed regimes, failed government experiences. And I'm going to tell you some of the research that went into finding what happened to create the MINDSPACE document. You have to go into, it was a book that was written in England. Hang on. It's called Brainwashed. I have a copy of it. And I read it. And they used horrible psychological experiments on living, breathing people, Sandi, much like we saw in Nazi Germany, where they did horrible experiments on living, breathing people to meet their agenda. You had this going on to help create MINDSPACE. And what have you done? You've either literally killed or permanently maimed a whole society who was forced into participating into this. Does this sound like something that you'd really be proud that your government actually put upon its people? No.
Yeah. It's unbelievable, really. I mean, it really, it's a massive, it's a massive document, really. And
It
I
really
I'd
is.
advise anyone to have a look at it, because it was really, when did it come into being? It was in the 1990s, wasn't it?
That's when it first surfaced, but of course we know the roots. Yeah, when for it to surface in the 90s, they had to go back at least 20 years in research. So think about that. So what we can do, if you'd like, I know that you have a colleague who's looked into it. I know that I was part of a former team known as the Liberty Bells, and we did several
I watched
shows
those. They were
going
very
through
good.
MINDSPACE, and we even wrote an article to submit to the UK column, and I don't think it was ever picked up, but we did a ton of research into it. And so what we can do, Sandi, if you'd like, is we can bring some of that to light in another show, and we can
Absolutely.
devote
I
it to
think
that.
we will certainly have to get you back before we go. Now I just want to go into now, perhaps, yeah, we've got time. The spiritual war we're in. I mean, my goodness, this kind of this assault on particularly Christianity, I've got to say,
Oh yeah.
and you know, almost the. I really want to go into. Not many people would have heard about the Noahide Laws, and I know they're quite contentious, obviously, but I think they have to be. We have to spell them out. So tell us about what you recognise about the Noahide Laws and what they mean to us, and what they're presented as, and what they really mean. Yeah.
Okay. They are presented as part of the Ten Commandments, which we all know that God gave to Moses on Mount Sinai. Nothing could be further from the truth, because if you look at the 7 Noahide laws that are supposedly part of the 10 Commandments, they don't exist. One of the things that I've noticed about the Noahide laws, it says, okay, you shall not kill. Well, one of the commandments says you shall not kill. What they don't tell you is that because the roots for the Noahide laws are based in tumultic teachings, which are anti-Christ, anti-God, you can murder, but you cannot murder a select few. So in other words, it's kind of like that bread example. You can have one type of bread, but you can't have them all. So there come with each of the seven caveats that are under the surface. Uh, Another one, for example, is you're not supposed to have sex with children. Well, nobody wants to have sex with children. That's just wrong on every level. Okay, we have a commandment that doesn't say don't have sex with children. It says don't commit adultery. Where the Noahide laws have got that kind of underlying message is that the Noahides cannot have sex with their own children, but your children and my children are A-OK. Does this sound like a law or a set of laws that honor God, that honor creation, that honor the sanctity of human life? No, they don't. And the reason why is because they are man made. You could trace them back to the Pharisees and Sadducees of the early Old Testament times. There was a faction, and let me stress, there is a faction of the Jewish faith, not the entire Jewish faith, but a corrupt faction of the faith that carries this out to the day. And they have the firm belief that they are the only race, not race, but religion that should survive, and that everyone else is fair game to be culled. Does this sound godly? Does this sound Christ-like? I thought God created everyone and Jesus came for everyone. So you have to look at the very fine lines that are there, but they are totally man-made based on the Babylonian Talmud, which is totally different from the Jewish Talmud.
Absolutely, that's the
And
difference.
if you look at the roots of the Babylon Talmud, you will see it's based in Islam. So you have a combination of Islam, communism, corruption, political, that form these laws. They're passed off as, oh, they're good for the society. Oh, they're good because they give us a common goal. The United Nations has adopted the Noahide Laws, Sandi, as the be-all, end-all for how humans should interact with each other. So the closer we get to this one world government, the more we are going to see each one of the tenets of these Noahides kick into high gear.
Absolutely. This was a big revelation to me because I think it was 1991, these were put into public law in the United States under, I think it's 102 to 14. Is that right?
Bush. Yes, lovely Mr. New World Order Bush. Yes. Okay, George the First, we call him here.
Oh dear, that awful man.
But
Yeah.
let me give you a little bit of history of how they ended up in America. I don't know when they were adopted by the United Kingdom. I do know that the United Nations has lock, stock, and barrel adopted them, so much to the point that if you go back and you look at the Convention to the Rights of the Child, if you look at the Declaration of Human Rights, they're woven in already. But what happened here in America was Jimmy Carter was our sitting president. So this was 1978. Okay. He had a really, really good relationship with Rebbe Schneerson. Now, Rebbe Schneerson plays into the Noahide laws, as is he was the one who helped resurrect them over in Russia, and he immigrated to America. He brought them with him. And he somehow gains an audience and a friendship with the President of the United States. And they had a meeting, a coming of the minds. And they had this great discussion. And it was, well, education is about changing culture. This is where the United Nations got the idea to use education as the chief change agent to change the world, was this very thinking. So Schneerson is over here telling Carter, we need to use education to change the culture, because if we change the culture, we can have a greater world. There'll be peace and, all the other BS that comes with that. And Carter's going, sounds good. So they came up with this agreement to replace the constitutional biblical foundation of America and then say that the Noahide laws were the foundation, the sole foundation for the United States of America.
I mean, that is so dangerous because
Do
it
you
actually
see what a
creates,
lie that
yeah,
was?
yeah, it creates a kind of two-tier legal system, doesn't it?
It absolutely did.
Yeah, the Jews, or the, I don't like to use it. I mean, I don't know, because there's Jews and Jews. They're governed by the Torah laws, but the Gentiles would be governed by the Noahide laws. So you've got,
Right, right. We absolutely, yeah, because we're subhuman. We don't
yes, yeah.
we don't need to exist. So Sneerson brings this in. They both signed the agreement. It was a big deal, and every year when Sneerson's anniversary of his birth comes around here in America, it's Education and Culture Day, and we celebrate that stupid agreement. Now, Carter signed the agreement, and you're right. Bush is the one who signed it into public law, but that agreement included changing education. So that was 78 when that agreement was signed. Do you want to know the date of when the Department of Education was created under Jimmy Carter in the United States?
When was that?
1979, because the agreement that Sneerson and Carter signed was to last 1 year and then be renewed every single year thereafter. So it doesn't matter if it was a Democrat who started it. We've had our Republicans kick the can down the road because Reagan comes in after Carter, and Reagan was supposed to be this cowboy with a white hat, so to speak. He had the opportunity to shut down the Department of Education and then chickened out. You know why? Because he signed an agreement with Gorbachev in Russia to unite education and technology so that there could be culture sharing.
Wow.
So we're damned if we do, we're damned if we don't, because you had a Democrat over here get in bed with someone who is an out and out Christian hater and wants to annihilate every Christian and change the very fabric of our nation. And then you have another one who's supposed to be the good guy, and he gets in and, oh no, we're going to squander and culture share to the point of we're now going to take in the data tracking systems that the Russians perfected, and now we're going to unleash it on America. And then what did the UK do? UK did? They came along somewhere and go, "Ooh, this looks good. Let's us do this."
It's unbelievable, really, because I did look at the Noahide laws, and on the face of it, there's 7 of them, isn't there? And they're again, they sound quite,
They're innocuous.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a bit like the 17 goals, isn't it? The 17.
Oh yeah. But they're for the good, Sandy.
They're
Don't you
very
know?
similar. It's all for the greater good. It's all wonderful. But actually,
Yeah.
when you look at it, it's a
It's
framework that
punitive.
would criminalize all religions apart from the religion that they want to promote.
Which is a corruption of the even the Torah. It absolutely is.
Exactly. Because they ban idolatry, and that any religion other than theirs can be deemed as idolatry. And this is quite worrying. Under the authoritarian stuff that's going on, this could happen. Yeah.
Right. Well, one of the laws is, well, you can't say the name of God. You have to use G-D.
That's right.
Now, hang on just for a second. I have people who are professing Jews who don't subscribe to the Noahide laws, and they're doing the same bloody thing. And it's like, why? Why can you not use the O? What is so toxic about that O that you have to go G-D? Why can you not say the whole name? Now, here's the kicker. You can't use the name of God, according to this Noahide law. Guess who gets to decide whose name, what God's name it is that you're going to not be able to say? It's them. It's the Noahides. So in other words, Jesus, because he was considered by all these other corrupt people and laws, he was considered to be, someone worthy of eating poop, because if you go back and you look at the Babylonian Talmud, you will see that is what they equate Jesus to, someone who is only capable of eating poop because he's just that vile. So if I call out Jesus, guess what? I run the risk of being corporally punished to the point of beheading.
Yes, so that's a real worry, is that actually they do have very, very draconian punishments for anybody that they think is blasphemous. Yeah.
Yeah, if you think you were smoking dope on this, I wrote a study on the Noahide laws that I had a small group take the course. We took 14 weeks, Sandy, to go through everything. But it took me a year and a half just to pull all the resources together because guess what? Unlike the Sustainable Development Goals, where you can literally go find the handbook, Noahide is scattered, but it's scattered on purpose so that normal people will not find it.
Yeah, no, this is why it's really important, and the whole kind of rainbow thing as well. You know, it's all part of it because you look at the sustainable goals are all in the same rainbow colors. There's a correlation between the rainbow and everything that's a little bit, well, what I call is it's kind of it's degenerating. It's dumbing down. It's associated with so much now. And I do remember I did read a book by a lady called somebody Cumby. Was it Florence Cumby? And it was The Hidden Dangers of the Rainbow. And it was all
Oh,
part
yeah.
of this. Yeah. Did you? I don't know if you've ever read her book. She's amazing.
Well, Noahides will use the rainbow, but they will compromise it as well. But I do know, and it's on my blog, and I'd have to send it to you if you want to, but and we could play it for your audience at some point. But I went into the color psychology behind each of the Sustainable Development Goals because the UN was not stupid when they created them. They got people who are marketing psychologists, and I didn't know if you knew those people existed, but they're part
Yeah.
of the minds. They're part of the mind space
Mind
because they
space.
use
Yeah.
colors to control the population. And so the UN employed those sorts of people to create the colors that we see when we see the Sustainable Development Goals. So, yeah, each one of the colors means a certain thing. And again, it's hard to find that research because they don't want you to find it. But if you're like me, you say, you know what, it's out there. I'm going to find it.
I've looked at that and I think I've got a few things on it. So we could put those in some notes to put up at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. All right, my dear.
This is so good. I mean, thank you so much. I mean, you are such a force of nature, Lynne.
Oh,
I
thank
love you
you.
to bits. I think your research is absolutely spot on, and you've got the energy and the life force, and you really get your point across. And I really think you are the most amazing woman, I have to say.
Thank you, Sandy. That is so humbling, but thank you.
It's just been, you've got so much knowledge, and I would love to have you back. I think, because we have the lovely Diane Rasmussen McCaddy, she's our kind of education side of the UK column. I think it'd be brilliant for you to get together with her as well at some
Okay.
point. I'll forward all your details onto her because she's really into the whole education side of things. She's another one of these people that was taken out, because she was not conforming to the stuff that they wanted her to conform to. So I think we could have the most amazing fun with some more interviews with you.
Yeah, we should have an open panel or some sort of, get
Yeah,
together
yeah,
and
yeah,
have all of us, share this because it does dovetail from one part to another part. And it's done that way on purpose. And I know you know that. And
yeah.
I know your audience probably is aware of that, but you never know who's going to listen. You never know who's going to learn. So you always want to make sure, no matter when you speak or write, that you leave something that's going to cause them to go, wow, I want to know more.
Exactly, and I think you've done that today, to be honest. And
Okay.
I mean, I always say this to people that I interview. Is there anything that you would like to say before we go, and how can we find you?
I think for the current state of affairs, whether it's in the United Kingdom, the United States, or Timbuktu, we're all finding that government is not our friend, that most of the foundations that are connected to our governments are not our friends, and we need to stop treating them as friends. We need to start treating them as adversaries because that's how we're being viewed from their perspective, is that we are an adversary that needs to be somehow controlled or silenced. And we need to make sure that even if they take us down, that we give them the biggest, bloodiest black eye that we can possibly give them before we're taken out. And where you can find me, my blog is commoncorediva.com. I do have a donate button there, that if you wish to financially bless any of the work that I do, because I do not receive any sort of compensation for what I do. That way I know that I can keep it away from corporations and governments and things like that, because, they have nefarious ways of giving. There is a way that you can do that electronically. If you don't trust the electronic system, you can contact Sandi. Sandi can get in touch with me and we'll work that out. But you can also find me on Twitter, X, whatever they want to call it today. That's at Common Core Diva. I am on Facebook as well. That's Common Core Diva 2023. My original page was removed by the Facebook gods because I made them very, very angry. So I came back and made another page. And right now, you can also find me on, I do some sustainable development goal research for the American Policy Center. So that's americanpolicy.org. And you can find some of my articles there as well.
Fantastic. Well, all I can say is, Lynne Taylor, thank you so much.
You're so welcome.